We have a celebration this afternoon, and we're going to celebrate somebody who shies away from the spotlight, who doesn't necessarily want all the recognition and hoopla. But Adrian, we want to recognize you. And so I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank everyone else for being here. It's my great honor today to recognize one of our G4S Custom Protection Officers, Adrian Johnson, with a certificate of appreciation on behalf of the entire Portland City Council. A few days ago, Adrian noticed that one of our custodians was choking. And without any hesitation, Adrian ran over and performed the Heimlich maneuver. If Adrian hadn't acted so quickly, this story could have had a much different ending. And so today, we're recognizing Adrian and presenting him with this certificate of appreciation for performing life-saving measures in a moment of need. We're sincerely grateful to you, Adrian, and this council is honored to present you with this award. And in particular, I want to thank you for being one of the people who, when help is required, you ran towards the situation and you rendered assistance. And that's a good inspiration, I think, for all of us. It's a good message for all of us. And it would encourage all of us to learn the Heimlich maneuver if we don't know the Heimlich maneuver. And maybe, Adrian, if you wouldn't mind, you could just share a few words on your thoughts and feelings.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
First, sir, I'd like to thank, my mom always told me not to push this on nobody, but I'd like to thank God first in all things. My second thing I'd like to say, on this day, there was a lot of heroes on this day. Everybody remembers 9/11. Everybody know what happened. The firefighters, paramedics, everybody that rushed in. Anybody can be a hero, anybody. I'm just happy that, you know, with my training that I had, it just kicked in. So I appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate my company I work for and the people that work here too.
And thank you, Adrian. We appreciate the work of all your colleagues, and we appreciate what you do inside the council.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fritz.
You're always so friendly to everybody who comes in, and I really appreciate that. And I also want to thank Mark, who's here, who was nearly a victim, but instead is here to celebrate with us. Thanks to Mark and all his SEIU colleagues who take such good care of us in City Hall. We really appreciate all of the work that you do.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If I could also just add my congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Every morning and every afternoon, I'm greeted and then departed with a kind word. And we really, is this the, oh, I'm sorry. And you are a model employee, and I always look forward to visiting with you when I head out of the building on the Fifth Avenue side, which I shouldn't advertise because that's our secret. That's our secret exit. And
What was, Nick? Was.
Yeah. They'll be waiting for us now.
And I also want to thank Mark for the outstanding service he and his colleagues from SEIU give us. And Mark and I have a relationship outside of work, and he actually was very kind to help me in my campaign for re-election. I'll never forget that. So thank you, gentlemen, both.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank all of my colleagues for this recognition. I just want to say you're the only person in this building who's wonderful every single day.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
And I look forward to hearing that every morning that I'm in this building. And I just want to say that I had no idea that it was you that was in distress. But you have always just given that warm smile no matter what's going on. And you don't know what that brings to this building every single day. So I appreciate you both. I'm so glad you're still here. And I'm working on being wonderful every day, but some days, you know.
Okay. Okay.
Very good. And if you wouldn't, Mark, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm Mark Jeffries, and I'm a janitor here at City Hall. And, better get my glasses on. And I just want to say thank you very much, Officer Adrian Johnson of G4S Security, for rendering me life-saving first aid when I was choking on food. My family and others who care about me are also very grateful to you. We're in your debt. I also want to thank G4S officers Ovi Griggs, Kirk Robinson, and Sergio Verduzco, who assisted you after you alerted them to my dire situation. And I also want to mention the members of my company, Relay Resources, and a representative of SEIU Local 49, Casey, I believe her name is Felice, and are also here to honor you today. So thank you. And I hope I got your last name right. So
good.
thank you, Adrian.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. You know, this is this is a great time for us to slow down a little bit and take a step back and remember that we're all a family here in City Hall. Things get pretty frenetic, but it's situations like this that remind us that we are all human and that we all rely on each other. And I'm appreciative that you stepped forward. And Mark, we're so glad that this didn't turn out to be something much more serious. If you gentlemen wouldn't mind, the council would love to get a photograph with you and your certificate. And you, Adrian?
They gonna say, Mark, come over here.
Just go around, right? Just walk around.
Oh, you want me to walk around?
Yep, just go around inside there.
Mark, we'll put two in the middle. Put you in the middle here. Oh my God, look at all these cameras.
Yeah, follow that.
Not going to be easy. All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is the September 11th, 2019 afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Hardesty,
Here.
Udaly, Fritz,
Here.
Fish,
Here.
Wheeler.
Here, we'll hear from legal counsel. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be tolerated. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you very much. We had a couple of items that Commissioner Fish was kind enough to move from the morning schedule so that we could keep on schedule this morning. We'll start with those items. Item 860 first, please, Carla.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract to procure electrical switchgear and medium voltage substation transformers for the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant, project number E10897, for an estimated amount of $3.5 million.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor and colleagues. We have two brief matters this morning. This is quite straightforward. It would authorize a competitive solicitation and contract, so all we're doing is launching the process. We're not accepting a contract. We're joined today by Project Manager Clarence Thompson and Engineering Manager Paul Sudo. As you know, Environmental Services is planning a complete replacement of an aging electrical substation that provides power to the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant. It's the city's main treatment plant that processes the sewage and stormwater of 650,000 residents. The substation is over 40 years old and is past its design life. And today, Clarence and Paul are here to give us a brief presentation. Gentlemen, welcome.
So the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant main substation is located on the northwest edge of the treatment plant. The plant is located in North Portland at 5001 North Columbia Boulevard. The purpose of the main substation is to serve as a single point of connection between the electrical utility and the plant. It distributes power to the entire plant. And as was mentioned, it has reached the end of its design lifetime since it was constructed in 1971. So our plan is to replace the entire substation. Ordinance 189054 was approved by council for electrical design of the substation replacement. And the current ordinance under consideration is for the purpose of pre-purchasing equipment that requires long manufacturing times in order to expedite the construction phase. The overall project schedule is shown on this slide, and as I just said, we want to order the long lead major equipment now before the construction documents are completed in order to save time during the construction phase. We estimate that we can save over 6 months of total project time via this approach. This slide summarizes the previous point and also shows that pre-purchase of the major equipment will reduce the risk of issues arising during construction that might lead to change orders. The construction phase of the main substation replacement will be performed by the contractor who has been selected for the secondary treatment expansion program. This will allow the Bureau to capitalize on that contractor's experience in completing complex projects at a wastewater treatment plant while minimizing the risk of outages. Therefore, we recommend an authorization for a competitive solicitation and goods and services contract to purchase 15,000 volt primary metering switchgear, 15,000 volt main switchgear, 5,000 volt switchgear, and medium voltage substation transformers for the treatment plant for the amount of $500,000.
And that concludes our presentation for council questions.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Hardesty?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One, you want approval to pre-buy equipment when you don't have the contractor selected. What if it's equipment that the contractor is unfamiliar with?
The contractor has already been pre-selected. The contractor is the same contractor that is performing the secondary treatment expansion program.
Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, Commissioner Fritz, is there any public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one signed up.
Very good. Any further business on this item before I move it forward? All right, this is the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item, Carla, 861, also from the morning agenda.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Columbia Slough Outfall 100 drainage retrofits for water quality project number E10689 for an estimated cost of $1,760,000.
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor and colleagues, we're joined today by Joe Dvorak, Division Engineer, and Patrick Lease, Project Manager. The Bureau of Environmental Services Columbia Slough Outfall 100 Drainage Project, there's a mouthful, is necessary to improve water quality in the Columbia Slough. It is located in the Park Rose neighborhood. This project will construct stormwater planters, stormwater filter manholes, and other infrastructure to remove pollutants. Here today to give us a brief presentation is Joe Dvorak and Patrick Lease. Gentlemen, take it away.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Dvorak. I'm with the Bureau of Environmental Services. I'll start by giving a little background on this project, which is the wrong one. This is the wrong presentation.
We just have a blank screen.
Can we put the next one in?
That
don't
was the
have it.
last one.
Oh, 861, all right.
Guess you'll have to act it out.
We do have handouts, but it looks like I think we're there. Here we go. I'm sorry about that. So I'll start by giving a little background. So the Columbia Slough is a high-priority DEQ cleanup site. In 2005, the DEQ issued a record of decision for slough contaminants.
Carla, what?
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. Good.
So this is a photo of the Columbia Slough. The Whitaker Slough contributes flow to it. So to the left of the screen is the actual Columbia Slough. Over 200 city outfalls contribute stormwater to the slough. So an outfall is a pipe that conveys stormwater to a receiving body. So Basin 100 is one of the 71 high-priority areas in the Columbia Slough. A basin is basically the area that contributes flow to the outfall. So the city work to implement the record of decision is being performed under an intergovernmental agreement with the DEQ. So the goal of this project is to treat stormwater runoff from the right-of-way in Basin 100, and thereby will be complying with the 2005 record of decision and the 2016 intergovernmental agreement. And now Patrick will give some more details on the actual project.
Okay, the project, like it was stated previously, is located in the Park Rose area. This screen here actually shows the area of the project. To the south or lower part of the screen is the Park Rose Middle School. In the middle of it is the Park Rose High School. And there's just a friendly slide there showing canoers going through a slough, part of the
Looks
Columbia
like Bob
Slough.
Salinger and his family.
Might be. Project description, we're going to construct 10 underground injection control facilities to meet stormwater requirements. We're also going to construct 12 storm filter manholes. We're also going to construct 2 green streets with ADA ramps. The green streets will be on Shaver, and there's a crosswalk there on Shaver, so it's going to be a bump out. And we figured that was a great place for the green streets to shorten up the distance for the crosswalk. It also helps with PBOT's Vision Zero. The picture on the far left is a picture of a UIC, which is typically the water goes into a catch basin, goes into the sedimentation manhole where the sediment falls out, and then goes into a sump, and the sump then distributes the water to underground. The next picture is just a demonstration of pretty much the same thing, but the sump's been exchanged with a filter manhole, and that will filter out the pollutants and then go right back into the storm system that's there. Public involvement, there's been a lot of public involvement for this. Public involvement outreach includes the residents, the school district, Park Rose Associates. There's been some open houses, flyers, door to door, and letters have been sent out to the people in the neighborhood.
How many languages did that material go out in?
That is a good question. I did invite a PI that is supporting this project, and her name is Debbie Castleton. She's right back here.
Oh, boy, we got royalty here. Debbie, can you come forward for a second? And by the way, colleagues, Debbie is the public outreach person that's pioneered a system we now use routinely at the Bureau where each affected property owner or resident gets what looks like a flyer. It's a newsletter. On the cover is a memo from whoever has been assigned to the project. In this case, Debbie has been assigned. It's a personalized memo from Debbie with her phone number. And
Not my personal number, just so you know.
it's not a personal number. But it does include her social security number and her bank account
Yeah.
number. And it has produced a sea change in our relationship with communities that we serve, because instead of getting a list of 8 numbers that you can call and being put on hold or whatever, you can actually call Debbie and she'll answer. Debbie, the question is, how many different languages did we use out in Park Rose?
The predominant language in this neighborhood is English, but we also translate it in Spanish because there is a large Spanish-speaking population. And Stefanos Gunawan, who is on our team, is the primary lead for outreach along with myself on this project. And he actually just did he went to the Jim Pepper's Native Arts Festival. He speaks fluent Spanish as well, which is great. And he also went to the Lewitt View Park summer free-for-all movies in the park just recently. Was very successful in that. And the Gateway Discovery Park. And he's worked very closely with the Park Rose School District and had one-on-one meetings with the principal as well. But Spanish is the other primary language in the neighborhood. So those are the 2 languages.
I appreciate that, but I think that the number of languages spoken in that community is significantly more than just Spanish and English, but I certainly appreciate all the work that's been done to really engage communities who've not been involved.
Definitely. And we are working to, in all of the neighborhoods, find out what are the languages being spoken. And so if you have some insight, I'd greatly appreciate some more on that, because it's been difficult finding out exactly how to get those languages so we can translate more accurately.
Well, there are organizations like the East Portland Action Plan, which is a volunteer group that meets monthly in East Portland. And there's certainly more than just Spanish and English folks who participate in those meetings. I would also go directly to the organizations like Asian Family Center and ERCO and I could go on, but
Yeah, and
the
I
thing
think-
is that they're kind of in that community, and so
Yes,
it's-
and Stefanos and I have definitely infiltrated this neighborhood, and specifically in the area of the construction impact and the design impact, the specific homes and residents, the apartment buildings and the school right there has been predominantly Spanish and English. But I do agree, the overall Park Rose area is much more than just Spanish and English,
Well,
but
in
in
fact, I
that
think
specific
the last
area.
time I was at Park Rose High School, I think they said there were 46 different languages spoken. Now, some of them were multiple dialects of the same language. So there's like multiple dialects of Cambodian, for example. And we do translate our materials into different languages. And we have, I just approved a River Views that's going out that had multiple languages so we can always do better, and we'll follow up
Oh,
with the
yeah.
East Portland Action Plan. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah,
Commissioner
thank
Fritz.
you.
And something that was, I think you do in Parks, Commissioner Fish, is on the back of the flyer, you say in the languages, if you need this translated into X.
On all of our stuff,
Into the,
yeah,
to the
everything.
10 safe harbor languages, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing for my colleagues to be aware of is when I was in charge of the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, we were working on a project so that what is now Civic Life, would have a list of what languages to use, depending on, I don't know whether that's still being worked on or not, but it seems like each organization shouldn't have to do all of that outreach, that we should have it.
Agreed.
right. And didn't we used to have a city civic engagement committee?
We do. We still do the Public Involvement Advisory Council.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
The budget for the project, is 1.6 million is the engineer's estimate. We plan to begin construction in April of 2020, and we're hoping that the construction will take no longer than 6 months. Any questions?
That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
Very good. Any public testimony on this item, Carla?
No one else signed up.
Goes to a
Very
second
good.
reading.
This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. Thank you for the presentation. It moves to second reading.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, Commissioner Hardesty, that our construction signs that we put out have multiple languages on them on what to expect during construction. So when construction does start, it does have a lot more languages on it, just so you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Next item up is time, sir. Oh, yeah, thank you for reminding me. The consent item, agenda, Carla, my understanding is 866 has been pulled. Is that correct?
Correct.
Who has it been pulled by, Carla?
Commissioner Hardesty's office.
Okay.
Have any other items been pulled?
I have no other requests.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Hardesty? Aye. Fritz?
I support these items. I just want to note on item 867, the Southwest Neighborhoods improvements on Southwest 26, that I know that there are some concerns in the community, and I think there's a lot of people wanting to be sure that the Southwest 26 improvements are done properly before considering other projects, and I know that there's ongoing conversations about that. With that, I vote aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. Next item is time cert 862, please.
Authorize the Director of the Bureau of Environmental Services to execute agreements with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to perform remedial design at Portland Harbor and conduct a public involvement program to facilitate public involvement in these projects.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, we have two really inspiring items back to back. One involving Superfund and one involving Portland Parks and Rec. And it's the luck of the draw this week, and I'm glad we have a full complement, almost a full complement of colleagues here to hear them. We're joined today by Annie von Berg, who is the Environmental Policy Manager for the Bureau of Environmental Services. And Annie is effectively one of 2 or 3 leads at the city on Superfund and spends the bulk of her time working on Superfund compliance. With the Portland Harbor Superfund site currently in the design phase of cleanup, and by the way, if any of my colleagues need a refresher on what the various stages of Superfund are, what design phase is versus remedial phase versus when we cash out, et cetera, we'd be happy to give you briefings. The City of Portland is taking on 3 projects to expedite action by all responsible parties. The first project was approved earlier this year by Council, the creation of a joint city trust that would pool and cap funds at $12 million each to spur new remedial design. The preparatory plans needed before the actual cleanup begins, and that's the key thing. We're in the remedial design phase, which is creating the plans that actually then guide the cleanup. The proposed actions today address 2 additional projects: cleanup design for Willamette Cove and an information management plan that addresses the overall Superfund site. We've been working on Superfund for a long time at the city, and I've had the honor of helping to co-lead our efforts the last few years. Today is really a breakthrough, and that's one of the reasons why we have an all-star lineup of people here who I think will be testifying. And Annie, why don't you take it away and walk us through both items? Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for your time today. My name is Annie von Berg. I'm the Program Manager for the Portland Harbor Superfund. So I am here today with our partners, the Port of Portland and the State of Oregon, who are in the audience. We are here to request approval to enter into an agreement with EPA for 2 exciting projects, and I'll give a brief overview of those projects for you today. So before I get into that, just a really quick...
Would you like some water?
That would be awesome.
Here you go.
Thank you.
It's fresh, low-run water, by the way.
Yay, delicious.
Thank you. So just a really quick reminder of the Portland Harbor Superfund. This is a 10-mile stretch of the lower Willamette River of contaminated sediment that's a result of over 100 years of heavy industrial use. EPA estimates it's going to take about 30 years to reach cleanup goals at an estimated cost of about $1 billion. There are over 100 potentially responsible parties. The City of Portland is one of those parties. Also, just a really
Let's be clear, we have the least exposure in this case. Counsel, did I say that correctly? Okay.
It goes without saying, yes. A really quick recap of where we are at in this process. We have made it through the remedial investigation and the feasibility study. In January 2017, EPA released its final record of decision. Earlier this year, the baseline sampling effort was completed. And earlier this year, EPA also sent notice to all potentially responsible parties that they have the expectation that the entire site will be under a legally binding agreement to kick off the remedy design work. So that officially brings us into the remedy design phase, or the cleanup design phase of this project. Like Commissioner Fish mentioned, when we say remedy design, that's really the engineered design for what will guide the actual construction of the cleanup. So as also Commissioner Fish mentioned, to step up to our obligation for this phase of the project, we proposed 3 projects. The first one you saw earlier this summer is now in full effect. That's the City and State Trust that pooled and capped up to $24 million of public funds to help get that expedited and moving along. In return, the city and state will get credit from EPA for those funds that are used. What I'm here to talk to you about today are those 2 subsequent projects that we've proposed to EPA. That's Willamette Cove and the Information Management Plan. So I'll start with the Willamette Cove. This is an image of what Willamette Cove looks like today. It's roughly a 45-acre in-water site that we're talking about here. It's located between the St. John's Bridge and the railroad bridge. And as you can see in this photograph, it's just north of that railroad bridge there.
And for those of you who still can't orient this, just to the south, on the other side of the railroad bridge, is the University of Portland.
Yeah, thank you. And this is Willamette Cove in respect to the rest of the Superfund site here. So it's roughly kind of square in the middle there of the entire 10-mile stretch. So this site historically was used heavily from the early 1900s to the 1970s for heavy industrial usage. There was a lumber mill there, a dry dock, had a lot of overland work, including shipbuilding and ship dismantling in World War II. What that left was a lot of contamination in the in-water and upland area of this site. Here are just a couple photographs to show you and illustrate just how much work was done in this site. It's pretty impressive how much work was done in this cove area in 1934 here. So this is an important site and a site that we're really excited to get working on. It's a priority site designated by EPA, DEQ, and the city. And primarily, we've designated a priority site because it poses a public health risk. Although this area has restricted access, we know people frequent this area, predominantly those that are vulnerable communities. So what that means is they're exposed to an unacceptable level of contamination. So it's important for us to make sure that this site move along as quickly as possible. The challenge with this site is those that are responsible for the bulk of the contamination no longer exist. So 4 public agencies got together, discussed the opportunities and the benefits it would provide the public by moving it along quicker. It also presents a couple of those opportunities is an incredible amount of environmental enhancement, habitat enhancement there that's pretty unique for that swath of the industrial corridor. It also presents an increased opportunity for collaboration for the work that's currently being done on the upland. That's being done with the Port of Portland and Metro.
Excuse me, Mayor. Thank you. Who owns that land?
That's owned by Metro. And that was purchased with natural area bond funds, hopefully to create a natural area and to do some connectivity with the trail there.
And by the way, when I saw this PowerPoint originally, I asked, why U.S. Department of Defense? We know that there are some sites, for example, in the Superfund footprint where Agent Orange was manufactured. This is much more straightforward. You saw an earlier picture where warships were manufactured. So United States Department of Defense is a public partner because this was a shipbuilding site during the war.
Yeah. So this is a great example of 4 public agencies coming together and moving a site forward that otherwise may have stalled for quite some time. So we have worked with EPA on coming up with an agreement of what that would look like. Basically, the commitment is to move forward towards a 100% design. That's the agreement you have before you today. We estimate the cost of that in-water design will be around $8 million. All 4 public agencies are splitting that equally, and we anticipate that to take about 3 years to complete. I'll move to the second project that's within your ordinance package.
Let me just clarify on that one,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So it's just to design the project, it's not to actually do it?
That's exactly right. So this will be that engineered plan that will guide the cleanup. There'll be another round of negotiations and a number of parties discussing who will actually do that portion of the work.
Colleagues, or Mayor, would you prefer to ask questions on this particular item and then go to the next, or hear the next and then ask questions of both?
I think individually for me.
Yeah.
So can we pause here for a second?
Sure.
Can we bring the camera up and just take some questions, and then we'll do the second part of the presentation?
So I'll continue with my questions then. So I'm assuming, because I know how carefully you're working on this, that when we get into the actual remediation of cleanup, there'll be a discussion about the order which we do things in? Because your map showed that this is downstream from the major contamination area.
Do you mean order respective to all of the other sites? Yeah, that will be something that EPA determines. It's my understanding they're working on that in terms of sequencing for that. They will be the ultimate deciders.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
All right.
Okay, so let's now move to the second piece of the presentation.
Great. So the second project in this proposed legislation is what we're calling the Information Management Plan. EPA is currently working to break down the site into smaller project areas to make the work more manageable. This image that you're looking at here shows what we call sediment management areas. Those are in the pink kind of blobs. Depending on how those areas get divided and broken down, we may be looking at anywhere from 10 to 18 distinct project areas for this whole mega site. And so what that ultimately means is that there is going to be an enormous amount of information collected, analyzed, and reported on a small scale for decades to come. Currently, there is no plan for how to standardize the collection of that, how to stitch that all together, and where to house that to make sure that that is accessible to all stakeholders. So the city and state has stepped up and come together to build a plan that will guide how that information is collected, where it will be stored, and make recommendations given feedback that we hear from stakeholders on how to make that information easily accessible, how to make it timely, and how to make it transparent for those that are both regulating the cleanup, who are performing the cleanup, and those that are interested in tracking the progress. Now, we see this plan as promoting long-term consistency, gaining efficiencies, and adding a layer of transparency to a pretty complex project that we know is coming. So having this standardized and comprehensive approach to collecting this information is critical for the long-term success of this project. And the city and state, as public agencies, have a significant interest in what the guidance of that plan will provide. So we're very excited to be a part of this project. And I'll just quickly give you an image of the concept in general. I won't dive into the details, but this is kind of representative with the 3 blue boxes on the bottom of the type of information that will be developed and will be part of this guidance. So we have everything from environmental data to site maps, and also institutional controls, those things put in place to help protect public safety. So that's all being collected. We are going to build a plan for how that gets placed into a central repository and then made very accessible to the users. Those users include tribal governments, regulating agencies, performing parties, and the public in general. So we do estimate that this plan for the guidance here will be a little over $2 million. We're estimating that it take about 2 years to complete. And that kind of concludes my overview of that second project. I'll go into this next piece to see if you have questions.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about the development of the process that you're involved in now. And so this information sharing process, does it include community stakeholders? Does it include like community members who have been following this enormously long process?
Absolutely. So one of the critical components to building this is to do a needs assessment. And that needs assessment will be bringing in a multitude of stakeholders. But what we see as one of the most important stakeholders here is the community groups. So we have set up a system both to get their feedback, to help guide what that looks like, and ultimately help guide what the interface looks like for how they will get that information. And we're hoping this next portion that I'll share with you will help in the assistance to build capacity and funding for them to help us in that work.
And do we have a list of all the responsible parties? I think as a taxpayer, I'm happy that governments are stepping up and putting some resources in place, but clearly we didn't create, there were private business interests that actually created a lot of the environmental degradation. And so what's the other side? Where the private?
Let me take this one. There is no allocation process yet in terms of who's responsible for what. And a number of the PRPs, as you know, have taken the position, hell will freeze over before they acknowledge they have a liability or before they pay anything. So this is an example, Commissioner, where because the state of Oregon and the city of Portland have fiduciary roles to play in Superfund, this is a good example of us using our expertise to make sure that people get all the information on all the sites. In a perfect world, we'd pass the hat to other PRPs, or we'd have a mechanism to compel them to. We don't have a mechanism, and frankly, there's a virtue in my mind to having fewer cooks in the kitchen. We want to work this up with the CAG and with our key community partners, have this operational. It's a couple $1 million, that's a lot of money. On the other hand, it's something that we can move quickly on and share the costs with the state. So I love your instinct. And if there's a way to capture to get reimbursed, I'd love to pursue it. But at this point, most of the notorious PRPs are still signaling that, it's going to take litigation and other things before they even acknowledge liability. So that's the conundrum that we face.
And for those watching at home, PRP is potentially responsible party and CAG is Community Action Group. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
I love those
Advisory group, right.
And something important to note here, along with the trust, the city and state trust, and Willamette Cove, and this investment for the information management plan, these all accumulate credits with EPA for this phase of the project. So we do intend on getting reimbursed and not paying more than our fair share. I'd be happy to send along the list of the potentially responsible parties to you as well.
The reason I made that sort of half-hearted joke earlier, colleagues, about, turning to council and saying, did I say it right in terms of our exposure? We believe we believe strongly that polluters should pay their fair share of their costs. The law is joint and several liability. What that means is that we could be to within $1 calculation, we could kind of calculate down the road when the dust settles, what our true exposure is. If there's no one else around to pay their fair share, joint and several liability means we'd end up picking up the tab for others. So the reason the city has been reluctant to put a number out there or say something about its liability is because we do not want to pick up the share of liability for parties that have to pay for their own pollution. And what often confounds some of the members of the public is, well, why isn't the city just owning to some number? Well, we can do so, but we can also shoot ourselves in the foot. the name of the game is for us to pay our fair share too, but not a penny more. And certainly not to pick up the tab of other polluters, because the principle is polluters pay. And so that's just a nuance that sometimes is misinterpreted by some members of the public as the city's not willing to step up and own their piece. No, we're owning every part of the work. In fact, we're being sued for owning it too much. That's not the point. It's that we don't want to strategically start talking numbers and let anyone else off the hook.
Commissioner Hardstein.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Fish. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, but my question was really about how are we putting pressure on the responsible parties that we can find, right? And so I understand that we're not at that place yet.
We are. The agreement that you approved a number of months ago with the trust is a carrot and, rather than a stick, because we don't have a big stick, is a carrot. If you want to join us doing remedial work, we're going to make an investment, we're going to move this process forward, and as a result, we all win. We don't have the stick. The EPA has the stick, and that's going into court and getting orders against people. What we have is the carrot of saying, now is the time to step forward, do the right thing, do your fair share, and we'll actually, through the trust model, the city and the state will invest with you to move the ball. All against the backdrop of every penny that we invest is a credit against what our liability is, not one penny more.
That's right.
So we go back to the slide?
Yeah, I just have one more quick slide for you. This is the last component of your legislation today. This is a proposal to dedicate funds for public involvement related to the projects we just reviewed. We're proposing up to $300,000 over in the next 4 years to assist in public involvement and public outreach, especially to those that will be most affected by the cleanup. If this is approved, we will have our first funding announcement going out this fall for that. So with that, that concludes my
So I
presentation.
have a question on that. So is this a hypothetical commitment? Is this an actual commitment? Is this going to be brought through the ordinary budget process? What is your expectation?
That this is a hard commitment and it will be brought through in the budget this year.
And this is a cumulative 300,000, not per year?
That's correct. Cumulative to 4 years, because we expect the remedy design phase for the city of Portland to last about 4 years.
And how will those $300,000 be expended?
They'll be expended primarily in community grants and activities to support the outreach and education of this area. We have a set of criteria that will be included in that first funding announcement that will be very targeted in helping us in our needs assessment for that information management plan.
Mayor, the council
Commissioner Fish.
will decide in its wisdom how much of this gets allocated to the Bureau of Environmental Services and how much gets allocated to the general fund.
Very good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You asked all my questions.
We're becoming the same person
Becoming,
again.
wait a second.
There it is.
That's
There it
scary.
is.
Can we take a break? Annie, thank you for, do we have invited guests or people who've just come to sign up to testify?
Well, I hope we have folks listed as testimony. If not, I'd love to invite some folks
So
up.
Carla, who's the invited testimony?
I don't have the invited, I have the list of people who signed up here.
How many
Okay.
people do we have?
We have 5.
So
Very
let's
good.
bring all 5 up together.
Cassie Cohen, Ranfis Villatoro, Bob Salinger, Jackie Calder, and Lightning.
Cassie, why don't you sit on the first chair? Because I think it's important to hear from our advisory body first, and then we'll go down the line. I don't see Lightning here. Who was the other person?
Ranfis had to leave, so he won't be present.
Lightning
yet.
will come up later, he said.
Who had to leave?
Ranfis Fiatoro.
Does our friend from the state want to testify? Tim? Why don't you- Okay, good. Cassie, why don't you take it away?
Thank you. My name is Cassie Cohen. I'm the lead for the Portland Harbor Community Coalition. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners for having us be here today to testify in support of this legislation today. I just wanted to indicate that, we haven't had much time to engage our coalition members in what the implementation means for this ordinance. But I think
I can speak for myself that I think it's a good first step to indicate that the city and other agency partners are stepping up to and continuing to be a leader in moving forward in the Portland Harbor cleanup process with this remedial design phase. And also in recognizing that communities that are impacted historically, currently, are experts in this process with their lived experiences, and that the city has begun to really move in the right direction to partner with our coalition and many other stakeholders in and also in expanding transparency and accountability with Superfund-related issues, and healing relations that historically were broken with these communities around the river issues and other related issues. So we will continue to be a stakeholder in this process moving forward, having regular, we hope monthly or bi-monthly meetings with the city, with BES leadership and the state and the Port of Portland, to find a common set of values. We hope to begin to address historical disparities around workforce, contracting opportunities, as well as working on all three of these projects, we hope. So the information management plan, the Willamette Cove pilot. We have a lot of interest in Willamette Cove. We're also involved in doing a train the trainers for the Upland property with Metro, so I can fill you all in on the work we're doing around that. And yep, we're generally supportive and open to dialogue with our, Jessica Terlikowski will be present at our coalition meeting this next week to share the ordinance components and have dialogue with our coalition members. So we look forward to that dialogue. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Cassie, good to see you. I'm curious as to whether you've been envisioning how the Community Coalition could partner with the Portland Clean Energy Fund initiative on some really innovative, creative opportunities to train our young folks in how to do this kind of mediation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I hope that there's some planning, thinking going into that now, because every time I see the Community Coalition, I think of all the opportunities we have to train another generation to be real leaders in environmental stewardship. And if we miss those opportunities, we're not going to get them back.
Yeah, I mean, we are pretty laser focused on the jobs training opportunities for Portland Harbor Superfund for impacted communities, and are looking at kind of all options on the table as much as possible, whether it's Superfund Jobs Training Initiative through EPA and other means, we hope. So we hope to engage the city, continue to engage the city in that conversation and see how it dovetails with Clean Energy Fund, absolutely.
That, by my reckoning, there's now no money left to distribute in years 1 through 5. But that's a terrific idea to use that resource. And we'd be happy to help you formulate a grant application.
Great, sounds good.
Thank you.
Mr. Salinger.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and members of City Council. My name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for Portland Audubon Society, also a member of the Portland Harbor Community Coalition and of the Portland Harbor CAG. So we're here today to support moving this resolution forward. We really appreciate the work of the city and the proactive approach it's been taking over the last couple of years, including the work earlier this year, the resolutions that were passed earlier this year as well. Commissioner Hardesty, I really appreciate your question about holding responsible parties accountable. We are very, very concerned about that and making sure that, the polluter pays principle is adhered to. And it's very complicated, obviously, with a site with this many PRPs. we think the city is making the right choice in taking this leadership role, because somebody has to break the logjam and get things moving and show folks how it's done. We remain very concerned about how many PRPs are not in negotiations with EPA and are stalling, and we've seen that now for 20 years. So we do think the city is absolutely making the right choice by moving these sites, starting to get things working, showing that it can be done, and then it will need to loop back and make sure that any costs that should be borne by somebody else are truly allocated properly. We appreciate the community outreach piece. This is an incredibly important site. It's a little different than most of the other sites because it will be a publicly accessible site. There aren't too many sites in Portland Harbor that are truly publicly accessible. So this one really has to meet very, very high standards, and we need to make sure that all the potential public uses that could be on this site in the future are truly allowed for. If we make mistakes here, we'll foreclose opportunities in the future. As far as the job training goes, I would just add to that. I look at these numbers and $8 million. Cassie and I were just talking about this in the back. $8 million. Most of that goes to consultants and folks we bring in from somewhere else, and it leaves. It goes away. We know that Superfund is actually a very good investment from the work of Eco Northwest and others. That for every dollar spent, the city actually gets more than $1 back. So even with that situation, we're getting a lot back from this economically. But the reality is that too much money leaves, this. For better and for worse, is job training that's going to continue to give. We have a lot of brownfields in this city. A lot of the work that we're doing here, the green infrastructure work that we need to do, whatever we train for this will be applicable in many other places. So it's a long-term and a short-term investment. And I think PCEF is a really good vehicle to think about that. There are real connections to climate change and the core functions that PCEF is trying to get at. So I think it's a really exciting nexus to explore. So I'll end there and just express my appreciation to the city for working so hard to break this logjam and get this process moving forward.
Bob,
Thank you.
let me just say, I'm very pleased that you mentioned the linkage between Superfund and brownfields. Just like we talk about in the community benefits agreements, can we get seamless employment opportunities in the metro region and different levels of government in public and private sector? So you go from one opportunity to another. Can we think holistically? The legislature now has twice given us a set of tools. This fall, I'll be reaching out to all of our allies to help implement those tools. We have to bring the county and we have to bring the school district on board in order to have a robust tax abatement plan, which would allow us to get brownfield remediation followed by affordable housing or other community benefits. So I'll be asking for your help on that, because we have to get 2 jurisdictions to concur in order for us to use that tool, which will then jumpstart the work we're doing on brownfield and create potentially a seamless training set of programs, both for Superfund and brownfields.
Yeah, we're very excited to work with you on that. We're part of the Metro Brownfields Coalition the city is participating in as well. We do have some new tools. And we absolutely need to move forward on brownfields. We need more tools than what we have, but it's hard to get more tools if you're not putting the existing tools to work. So getting those things in the ground, I know that when I'm down in the legislature testifying, they're asking us now, well, what have you done with the tools that you gave us? We gave you 2 years ago and 4 years ago. So appreciate the city's interest in moving those forward and happy to participate.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you I'm Jackie Calder, and I'm with the Portland Harbor Community Advisory Group and have been since February of 2002 and followed it just very closely. I'm just a volunteer, and I've worked on trying to get the harbor cleaned up. It's what I think of it. And I just have some simple things to say. How I think of Portland Harbor is a way of taking health care for all in a method of preventative medicine. We know PCBs cause cancer. We know PAHs have endocrine disruptors. We know all of that. And we could do so much just for the health care of this harbor just by cleaning this up. So I thank you very much for going forward on Willamette Cove. I think it's great. We still know that heck, the University of Portland still had their track team going through there and saying, oh my gosh, it's so contaminated. Why do they want to do that? But I go to the neighborhood association and I tell those people, you get them out of there because it's nasty stuff. The other thing I worked on, we had a precursor to the information system management. And I got to go around to all the neighborhoods and ask them, what do you want to hear about the Superfund? What do you want to understand? And their first thing, for the most part, was one, information, and two, a website. And this website would be this information system. And I hope it doesn't just stay on a real high level where it's just agencies and the PRPs and all those kinds of people that just high level. I hope it reaches out to real people, because they need to know how this Superfund affects their life every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty.
Please never say again that you're just a volunteer. Our city is so rich because we have so many just volunteers in our midst. So don't put just in front of volunteer.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank
Thanks for being
Thank you
here.
all three.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you so much for volunteering since 2002 on this process. I know that many of you have been involved in it for a long time, and there's a lot of talk now about including more voices in all these discussions. I want you to know also that I want longtime volunteers to be honored, and we need that long-term memory as well as the new people coming in to add to the richness. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for going forward with this. This is what my work's about, is getting this river cleaned up. So thank you for going forward with Willamette Cove and the information system. It's very difficult to go on the EPA's website and understand all that. So
It's difficult to go through
would
the
give
city's
meaning to
website and
me?
understand it, but we're working on that. We're working on that.
Yeah, what would give meaning to me is that if we kind of communicated to people, the community.
Thank you very much. Carla, anyone else?
Lightning.
Didn't see you hiding back there, Lightning. You were in your normal seat.
My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Connectome. The law secures to the people the right to a clean river. Judge David Mazzone. Now, my position is I think EPA is doing an outstanding job, and I will continue to do my overview over what you do. Some of my concerns on this is that I want to have more penalties imposed in a faster time frame, in a higher dollar amount. And once they go into signature on this, let them know real fast. It's time to start getting things done. You were put on the list in about the year 2000. We know where we're at right now. We need to get some things done. We have other examples to look at. One of the other concerns I have is on the aquatic dependent species. I want a more accurate list on what might be harmed at this time. On the 64 contaminants currently that we have discovered, and I'm sure we have more, I want to have it made very clear that in the Superfund site, once they go into agreement, a letter is sent to Mayor Wheeler, there will be no swimming in this site under any conditions. And I want to see that letter from EPA sent to the mayor directly. Now, on the Willamette Cove, I say this to Metro, what a purchase you made, what a disaster you've just stepped into. And I want you to cover all the cost on the upland. I want you to cover all the cost on the submersible land. I want you to cover all the cost. Welcome to the world of commercial real estate. Welcome to what you bought. Now, moving along on the PRPs, the potential responsible parties, if I'm correct, we're over 100, possibly up to 150. I would like a complete exemption on any and all parties. I would like any government entity to cover any and all cost here, especially looking at the United States of Defense. I want to have a report done on all these parties on how this will affect their businesses and how many jobs they will lose because of this extensive cleanup. I want to have an understanding when a lot of these contaminants were put in the river. This was back many, many years. We must look at the job creation, saving these businesses, saving the values of their property. I'd like to have all assessed values drop down to zero until we are done with this cleanup. There should be no property tax paid on this type of property at this time. There should be nothing. These properties are worth nothing until this is cleaned up. Again, to the PRPs, you are responsible for the upland on your land. In the water, that falls back on the state. I want them to cover any and all cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, this is an emergency.
That's correct. Is there any further business on this item? Any further questions? Hearing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
I greatly appreciate receiving this information and certainly support continuing this long process that we have been involved in. Every opportunity to ensure that those communities most impacted are actually benefiting from the jobs that are being created. Any opportunity to remind folks that it's not just government who has a responsibility for the cleanup. Any opportunity I have to make sure that we are centering what we're building towards as compared to what's the quickest cleanup we can do. If the goal is to clean it up so that this land is then valuable, that is a worthy goal. And I vote aye.
Fritz?
It's a very slow process, as was alluded to with a community volunteer from 2002. When I was involved in it, when the Office of Healthy Working Rivers was going from 2009 to 12, it was not nearly as far along as it is now. So I want to honor Commissioner Fish for the progress that you've made since you've been in charge of environmental services, and also all of the community volunteers who've put so much time and effort. And also thank you very much to the attorneys who've worked extremely hard on this project. Thank you. Aye.
Fish?
Thank you, colleagues. This is really a milestone year for us. As Annie Von Berg's PowerPoint demonstrated, this is the year in which Council has already authorized the trust, which has been fully funded by the state and by the and partially funded by the city, as was anticipated. And you know it was a good idea because a group of people whose source of funding will never see the light of day promptly went to court to try to stop us from doing it. So you know it was a good idea. So the trust has been established. Today we're asking for your approval on Willamette Cove and the information management system. Individually, they are important milestones in moving Superfund forward. Collectively, they are really a day, I think, where we can take pride in showing leadership. And I appreciated when Cassie Cohen actually used that word and said that the city is showing leadership. I appreciated when Bob Salinger used that term. We can't control what certain rogue PRPs are going to do. We can't, we don't have the influence we might have once had at the Environmental Protection Agency, although to their credit, they have said that Superfund is an area where they're going to enforce existing records of decision, and they have set a deadline of this year to get the remedial work done. So recalcitrant parties are going to find themselves dragged into court, hauled into court, and face penalties in answer to one of Lightning's concerns. But this is a real milestone, and I have the great pleasure of working on this issue with the mayor, but it's the senior staff people driving the work day to day. Annie, our community engagement specialist, the legal team, Mike Jordan, and many others who really deserve the credit for getting us to this point. And we're particularly appreciative of our partners at the state for really making some history. This trust idea is a history-making idea and shows that we are united in trying to really make progress on Superfund. And I want to also say that I'm very appreciative of everyone who took time today to come out and testify, to offer their perspective. We heard you loud and clear about being fully engaged, particularly in the information management system. And as the least technologically sophisticated person on this panel, it's very important to me that it be accessible to average people. It cannot be a system where you need to have a code and you have to have a PhD to access it. It has to be publicly accessible, and we have a chance to set a standard of transparency here, which will, I think, be a model at all Superfund sites by putting literally all the documents online and making them available. So thank you to everybody who made this day possible. Thanks for my colleagues for the confidence they've shown in our work. I'm very proud to vote aye.
Wheeler?
Thank you, Commissioner Fish, to you and to your entire team, and to thank, as you said, the entire leadership, and particularly the good folks at BES who've been working so hard on this. This is a complicated subject, and it doesn't get any easier day by day, but I feel like we're getting very, very close to the tangible phases of this process. We're now into the remedial design phase, the public engagement piece. We're making a commitment here to move forward on that. And I can almost see the day where we are in the process of the remediation. And I look forward to that. And we wouldn't be where we are today, Nick, without your leadership, without the executive leadership, and without the community working with us, pushing us, and engaging in a meaningful way. So I, too, am very happy to vote aye. I vote aye, and the ordinance is approved. Thank you. Next item is 863, time certain 2:30.
Authorize bid solicitation and contracting with the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for construction of the Gateway Green Development and Restoration Project for an estimated $3.7 million.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, Gateway Green provides access to off-road cycling in our great city. Sandwiched between I-205 and Interstate 84, Gateway Green is a unique park and an opportunity to put otherwise undevelopable land to community use. The vision for Gateway Green began in 2005 as a grassroots project, and Portland Parks and Recreation became involved in 2014 when the Bureau purchased the property from ODOT. Over the years, it has grown into a robust and strong public-private partnership with the Friends of Gateway Green, or FOG. I want to thank Paul Dickow and Linda Robinson, who are here today, who are past and present presidents of the Friends of Gateway Green, for your enthusiastic support of Gateway Green and for your great partnership with the city. The next phase of work at Gateway Green will include improved access and park amenities like event spaces and restrooms. Now I'm pleased to turn it over to Parks Capital Project Manager Ross Swanson, and also to acknowledge our special guest, the best-looking member of the Metro Council, Metro Councilor Sam Chase. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Fish, Mayor Wheeler, council members. I am Ross Swanson, I'm the Capital Project Manager with Parks and Rec. Next to me is Sam Chase. So after 5 years of partnership development, community engagement, feasibility studies, and design, we are here to seek permission to go to bid for a construction project at Gateway Green. I've stated 5 years in Portland Parks. That's how long we have owned the property. However, as the commissioner alluded to, Ted Gilbert and Linda Robinson have been working on this for over a decade, I think 12 years now. They are the co-founders of Friends of Gateway Green. They have led this initiative. Some of their achievements are securing a $1 million Nature in the Neighborhoods grant from Metro, as well as developing a large partnership network of partners, including Northwest Trail Alliance, Community Cycling Center, and several others. The representatives from them will be here to speak shortly. Let's see. In June of 2017, Parks and Rec and our partners decided we would open the Dirt Lab project, which is a beta project, essentially. We wanted to assess, given the unique nature of the site, it is wedged between two freeways, a light rail and a heavy rail, and you can only get there by foot or wheels on the I-205 MUP. We wanted to assess a couple of things before we dove in. One is, will the
public have interest in will they be able to get to the site? And number two is we don't have a lot of off-road cycling features in our park system, so we wanted to sort of wrap our minds around the maintenance aspects of that, the skill level aspects of that, and how we get going. So we opened that in 2017. After 6 months, we realized we had a pretty successful park on our hands. So at that point, we dove in to a public advisory committee process, which went about 8 months. And what you've seen today, what will come out of this project today is all came out of that process. As the commissioner said, we plan on building public event spaces and gathering spaces. We're going to provide access, better access across the park. The park has got steep slopes, which is nice for mountain biking, but not if you're a little kid trying to climb out after a long day of mountain biking. So we're going to make some of those gentler and a little better for a wider audience. And we are also going to provide drinking water and a loo, which is badly needed. In addition, over the last 3 years, we've been doing habitat and enhancements and restorations, and we'll continue that work. And one other item, which is a natural play area. One of the things we've learned in our public outreach as well, Linda Robinson and Metro also had their eyes on this, is when you come as a family of four, not all four want to mountain bike all the time. So a play area is a nice little amenity in addition to. So the project has completed bid drawings and specifications. We are currently working with procurement services to go to bid next week, hopefully. This authorization is an emergency ordinance, as we do want to hit the bidding period for winter, and that starts really mid-September. Total project budget is 5.75. Our estimated cost for this contract is around 3.7 million. That's in confidence, or that is in budget. We have a moderate level of.
People know now.
Wait a second. I want to swear my colleagues I trust your discretion, colleagues.
We have a moderate level of confidence in that estimate.
Commissioner Hardesty had a question.
Oh,
So this is my neighborhood.
yeah.
That is a smog-filled area with freeways on both sides. Have you done any air quality analysis prior to deciding to kick up more dirt in that particular area of the city of Portland?
Portland Parks has not. Now, I would ask the same question of FOG, as I know there was a 30-panel Oregon Solutions process that happened before the acquisition of the project, and I know there was a lot of studies back then.
We'll have a couple of guest speakers that can answer that question.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing about that. Yeah, that's my hood. So.
Okay. We have a moderate level of confidence in the estimate, mostly because of the bidding climate and the difficult access to the site. With that, I'm here to answer questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Sam Chase right now.
Councilor Chase, also Vice Chair Chase, right?
Yes, Deputy Council
Deputy
President,
Council.
yes.
Originally, when this thing was scheduled, Sam was not available. When it got rescheduled because of some other council scheduling issues, he was available. Thank you very much for taking time to be with us today.
Thanks so much. I'm really honored to be here.
Commissioner Hardesty. Sorry.
Sorry, Sam, didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to disagree with my colleague. I think Lynn Peterson is the better-looking Metro Councilor.
Yes, but she wasn't my former chief of staff. So we have to go with the ones we know.
And I want the record to reflect I wasn't here.
My name is Bennett, and I'm not in it, right?
Yeah, I was going to let that slide because I think I'm near the bottom, but I'll take it.
Moving on, yes.
So for the record, my name is Sam Chase, and I'm the Metro Councilor for District 5, which is the district where Gateway Green is located. And I'm really honored to be part of this conversation and the partnership between Metro and Parks. We have two very high-quality teams that are working on projects regularly and really doing a lot for our community's livability. I wanted to do a couple things. One is just really talk about the importance of this project for our entire region. One of the things that we know is that we've had 500,000 people move to this region in the last 20 years. We expect another 500,000 people in the next 20 years. And so we're really charged with how do we manage that growth as a region? How do we make sure that we have transportation systems, affordable housing, diverse and inclusive communities, and a whole host of other things. One of the really fundamental things that we need to do as a region is, as we're growing more compactly, as we're is creating a big backyard for everyone in our community. How can we make sure that people have access to nature, not just when you can get to Multnomah Falls and when you can actually get in, or when you go to Mount Hood? Those are wonderful assets that we have. Those aren't things that you can access on a daily basis or on a weekly basis as a part of your regular lifestyle. And so when we're building more assets or restoring natural areas like we are here, elements of the natural area, children's play areas, we're creating those experiences right here in our neighborhoods, in our communities. And it's particularly important that we invest dollars in some of our most underserved areas and communities. And I thank you not only for supporting this project here before us, but I know at least a couple of the members on council were somewhat engaged in getting these nature and neighborhood grant dollars in place in the first place that we have here. It was part of our 2006 bond measure, and Coalition for Livable Future, amongst many other entities, were involved in helping promote and make sure that we were really investing in our urban areas, that we're not investing all those dollars on our outer areas of where our urban growth boundary is located, but really in those areas that are still underserved. We have a lot of work to do. This is a really important step in the right direction, but we have much more to do, and I look forward to continuing our partnership.
Thank you. One time I was having lunch with Sam, and I asked him, people get confused about Metro and where it is in the hierarchy of things, so he drew this little diagram. He said, this is the easy way to remember it. At the top is Metro, then comes the county, and then comes the city. And I said, I said, now it makes perfect sense to me. Thank you very much.
I like to be helpful.
So we have thank you both very much. Carla, do we have invited testimony or just people who signed up?
I have people who signed up. I don't
Okay,
know
let's
if there's-
invite the first five.
All right. We have a total of 6 people. The first 3, please come on up, are Diana, Juntu Oberg, and Paul Dickow.
Welcome.
Is Linda Robinson on the list?
Yes, she's next.
Linda, would you come up and sit next to Paul, because we can fit 4. We can just add a chair. I just think for continuity purposes, we should have the former and current president of the board here to talk, and I think one or both can answer Commissioner Hardesty's question. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Diana, and I am really excited about this Gateway Green Development Restoration Project. I think that it is something that is very much needed. Everything that I've heard today is really exciting. I loved the fact that we are going to be expanding the neighborhood and also expanding the undeveloped areas of this neighborhood. I think that's very, very important. I was very intrigued on the water placements facilities. I wanted to know how many water fountains will be available in this park. And I'm also curious how many restrooms are going to be provided and whether or not they are going to be gender neutral, because I do think that is something that is a necessity. And then last...
By the way, our loos are gender neutral.
Oh, okay, thank you. And then lastly, the reason why I pose these questions is because there are community members that do not have places to call home. And so they would be, seeking out areas where they would be able to use the loos. They would be seeking out areas where they would be able to have clean drinking water, because that's something that is really hard to find within our own cities. And to really serve the community, it's serving the entire population, those who have shelter and those who are struggling to find shelter. And so those are things that are important to me. I was homeless for 2 years, and trying to find a safe place or find a public restroom without having to walk into a department store and feel the need to purchase something and being turned away because I don't have the money to make that purchase it's a form of homeless discrimination, and that needs to stop.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have someone from the Northwest Trails Alliance.
Yeah. So my name is June Berg. I am the Vice President of Northwest Trail Alliance. For those of you on the council who are not familiar with us, we are the nonprofit off-road cycling trail stewardship group that was established here in Portland in 1988. Our organization is 100% volunteers with no paid staff. I'm here today representing our over 1,800 paying dues members from the Portland area to support the improvement projects at Gateway Green. Since the construction and opening of the Dirt Lab, the soft surface trails in the park have been very popular with many cyclists and families looking to connect with nature via their bicycle. Even our inaugural Take a Policymaker Mountain Biking Day held at the park in June with some of your staff members in attendance was very successful with limited infrastructure. We look forward to the completion of this project to help increase the number of parks on the east side and to be able to host all of you for our next Ride Day. We also want to mention, with all of the enthusiasm and success of this park, that the council will complete and implement the off-road cycling master plan, because all residents of Portland, no matter their income or their background, should have access to soft surface trails via their bicycle for recreation and transportation options without the use of a car. Thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you to the Northwest Trail Alliance for all of your work on this project and just physical work in constructing the dirt tracks. And so you've proved to be not only an effective advocacy organization, but also people who put your money and your backs behind the work. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Mayor and Commissioners, thanks for your time. Friends of Gateway Green is an all-volunteer nonprofit board.
Put your name in the record.
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry, this is my first time in City Council. Thank you. My name is Paul Dickow. I'm the chair of Friends of Gateway Green and a resident of Madison South neighborhood. We support Portland Parks and Rec in their invitation to bid, and our support comes not only as support as testimony, but as a long-term pledge to convene partners, to raise additional capital funding, and to program the site. And we're very excited to partner with the city to accomplish those goals.
Thank you very much. You did that. If we had to give you a grade for your maiden voyage here at City Council, I'd say A minus, Mayor.
Absolutely. He was very concise, got his points across, and he didn't repeat himself.
You gave
I
back
thought it was
2
great.
minutes and 20 seconds. You're a hero in this.
I'll use him. I'm Linda Robinson. I'm the former chair of Friends of Gateway Green, and I have a lot of things I could say, so it's kind of tricky trying to figure out what to say today. But first, I want to thank a lot of people. For the folks at ODOT, a whole number of them, the folks at the city, the people who worked with Oregon Solutions and getting this whole idea of who should own it, who should run it, should it be purchased, should it be leased, should it be all those kinds of things that had to be decided. Working with getting the land transferred out of a right-of-way status so that it could become a park. All kinds of things have gone on over the years, and I also want to thank Ted Gilbert. He's the one who thought up the idea. I just agreed to help him make it happen. So all of that stuff has happened. I do want to address some of the questions that came up in terms of restrooms. There is not one restroom on the I-205 multi-use path. It's several miles long. This will be the first and only restroom that I'm aware of, and I'm delighted as much as anybody else is. There are 2 or 3 on the Springwater. This will be the first one. And to my knowledge, there's only one drinking fountain, and that's in the city of Maywood Park, and it isn't always working. So we will have a drinking fountain. These are things that all users of the I-205 multi-use path can benefit from. So that question. The other one, in terms of air quality, Joanne, we, Commissioner Hardesty, excuse me. We have tried several times to do some air quality studies. We have one concern. We don't want to do just an air quality study of the park. We want it to be in comparison to other activities in similar locations. So you don't just say, oh, look at how awful the air quality is here, when it's equally probably equally bad in other places. We did make one attempt with a student group from Portland State University. They put up some little things for 2 weeks in August one year. The problem is that they didn't work if it rained. And of course, it rained 3 days during those 2 weeks, so the results could not be used. I continue to have conversations with Vivek Chandez. He's with Portland State University, and we are continuing to look for ways that we might be able to get that kind of study. We did look at some data that was available, some testing that was done on school grounds in the city of Portland. Jason Lee is very close. The data there was better than the data at Lentz Elementary, better than the data of some of the schools that are in northeast Portland with industrial areas. So it's not the worst air, it's not the best air, but it could be worse. We are hoping that with the planting of additional trees and other things, we will improve that air.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Pardon?
I'm allowed to ask questions and then you're allowed to keep
okay.
going. So, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, the other thing is, I'm just really excited about this project. I've been working on it, as he said, for about 12 years. This is really a good opportunity to provide, to take a natural area that's of poor quality and to include the recreation in it, the active recreation, to try to combine those two without taking the chance on ruining a really good natural area. Anything we do to this area will improve it, and we can make it even more enticing, more enjoyable to ride in. So this is a really good opportunity to combine those two things.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We have one more, Carla?
Two more, Ted Gilbert and Andrew Jansky.
Come on up,
Well,
Joe.
Ted, it seems like you've got some splaining to do.
My name is Ted Gilbert. I was going to spare you guys the minute to share with you, but perhaps I can speak to Commissioner Hardesty's question. I don't want to go without saying the story of the 12 years it took to bring Gateway Green into being would not have happened without some major input at key times from two of your members. Commissioner Fish, Commissioner Fritz, you guys were enormously important to us. And while we're talking about the city of Portland, we've been absolutely blessed by our project manager at Parks in the selection of Ross Swanson. He has been sensational. Now, regarding your question, Commissioner Hardesty, I will acknowledge right off the bat that it's somewhat of a rationalization. Because when we started, when I took this idea, first place I took it to was Portland State's School of Urban Studies. And a graduate program did a complete inventory and analysis on this property. They looked at wind and water and sunlight and hydrology and air quality. But they didn't have the budget and the money to do an empirical study. I don't have pages of data to be able to share with you. But the rationalization came about 8 or 10 years ago. There was a study about air quality throughout the city, and particularly diesel emissions. And what they found was the air quality at Delta Park was worse than this. The area around East Bank Esplanade, next to I-5, was as bad or worse than this. And the rationalization that we were faced with, do we take advantage of the opportunities that may present with land, unique pieces of land, perhaps public ownership, for recreation, for environmental restoration, and for equity, because at the time we started, East Portland was the most park and open space deficient part of the city of Portland. Because it isn't perfect or it isn't even what we want. And the further rationalization was 10 years from now, a significant portion of the traffic on I-205 is going to be electric because it has to. We as a community have to do this. So not perfect, but hopefully.
Thank you, Ted. And Ted, thank you for your long-standing advocacy of this project. Without you and Linda, we would not be here today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Andrew Jansky. I'm the Northwest Trail Alliance Advocacy Director, and I work for Smiles of People. That's my pay. a bike changes a kid's life. They can go further than they can walk. They don't have to rely on their parents, transit, cars. They can explore nature. It's basically freedom. Someone invested me in the 70s when I was growing up, a little 10-year-old. I did bike rodeos at schools. I rode my bike at Raleigh Park and skidded down the grass, and we made little things at the school, and then I dammed up the creek, and I played in the water there in the mud and dirt, and that shaped me to be the civil engineer now. I've designed actually remedial designs that you saw today. I've been a part of those projects. I've done salmon restoration projects, water quality projects for the city and for some of the PRPs. So I've been involved in, some of this because of how I grew up. Gateway Green is changing kids' lives now. Kids on economical bikes, kids on hand-me-down bikes, kids on fancy bikes. They're neighbor kids, real Portlanders out there. I witnessed probably one of the more important changes recently where false perceptions and false information parroted for 25 years about the dangers of bikes in nature, misrepresentation, stereotypes of cyclists perpetuated, and fear-mongering of impacts to nature. That one day, basically, I saw someone's mind change. I saw the look in that person's eye. The information they were fed maybe hadn't been true. People who mountain bike don't all look the same. They're young, they're old, they're families, they're environmental stewards, basically. That person was Commissioner Fritz. The day was special to me because I saw all the happy kids, and I saw the look on your face when you saw what this place was creating. Anyway, so thank you for your past support on this project and this proposed funding, and also thank you to Councilor Chase for supporting the off-road cycling and inclusion of our community at Metro. I hope we can find a champion within the City Council to finish the off-road cycling master plan. It's been languishing for a long time, so that we can start new projects across the city to allow kids and families to access nature on bikes. We're a large community, and we're looking for a leader. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Carl, is that it?
That's all who signed up.
That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
Very good. Any further questions? This is an emergency ordinance. Carla, please call the roll.
Hardesty?
I appreciate the decades, it sounds like, of work getting from point A to point B on this project, and I vote aye and will be looking forward to seeing what comes out of this and asking more questions about air quality. Aye.
Fritz?
Ross Swanson, thank you very much for your work on this. I was particularly happy to hear that some of the more steep inclines are going to be, I think, softened is what you said. I remember Linda Robertson and me, myself, before I was elected, pulling Ivy on the steepest slope I have ever pulled Ivy on. And it was it was memorable, but actually, as Andrew Jansky just alluded to, pretty much everything about this project has been memorable. It came from the community, but not through the traditional neighborhood associations. It was a partnership between many different areas. I remember signing when we purchased the property from ODOT, and that in itself took a long time to get done. The grants, thank you, Metro, for extending the time that we had to make the match, and then making the match. The opening, oh my goodness. It was 95 degrees. I was absolutely dripping, just standing there. And it was all these families just bombing around on these slopes and everything. It was absolutely amazing. And we did the ribbon cutting with people riding through the ribbon rather than cutting it. It was really great. And then being able to allocate system development charge money to make sure that we can get to this day, and then handing it back to Commissioner Fish, who both started and now gets to finish up this phase of the project. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you for creating this place. And thank you, Ted, for just explaining why in 20, 30 years' time, hopefully people will not be worrying about the pollution on 205. They'll be just thankful that the trees that we've planted now have grown up big and shady and are just creating an even more beautiful space. Thank you very much. Aye.
Fish?
I had a chance to meet with the doctor over lunch, and we're going over some of my health issues, and sometimes the doctors I deal with wonder what what makes someone tick when they're faced with a challenge. And I said that my secret weapon is I love my day job, and I feel honored every day to come to work and to do it. And I'm not going to let a little cancer get in the way of that. And the truth is that this is a privilege to have these jobs, because every single day we get to make a difference or participate in something that marks progress or honor someone or celebrate. And we don't always convince people to report our work in that spirit, but that's sort of the nature of the times we live in. But this morning, I joined Commissioner Hardesty at an event, a very somber event, 18th anniversary of 9/11, and we honored first responders and firefighters, both those who had died and those who continue to serve. And it was a beautiful event, and it was only Portland Fire and Rescue can pull together an event like that, and you just feel so proud of the people who wear the uniform and serve the city. And within the last 24 hours, we finalized an agreement with Sailwood Community Center in Fulton, where community partners are going to be operating those facilities, the best of public-private partnerships, and the community uses will continue unabated. Well, that's as good as an outcome as you can get in a year in which Parks has had to take some tough cuts. This afternoon, we marked the second and third phases of 3 really terrific projects that are moving Superfund forward. And one of them, with a trust agreement, is a national model. And the other 2, just evidence that we can work together across government and with citizens and community members, that we can all work together to make progress. And today, Commissioner Fritz and I get to celebrate with you, Linda and Ted and Ross and Sam and Northwest Trails Alliance and others. We get to celebrate with you something we've been working on for a long time. I worked on the community solutions piece. We bought the land from ODOT for a scandalous amount of money, although at the time, I think they still thought they got the better of the deal because of all the uncertainty about environmental issues. Commissioner Fritz had the good fortune to preside over parks when there were a lot of developer fees, and true to her commitment, she invested heavily in East Portland and made sure that East Portland got to play catch-up with a record amount of developer fees that are funding these kinds of projects. And today, we get to sort of move the ball forward again. It's days like this that remind me again how lucky we are to live in this city, what an honor it is to serve on this council, and how grateful I am for the people in the community that we do our best work with. Aye.
Wheeler?
Happy to support this vision. Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz, and everybody who is involved in this. Ted, Linda, Ross, Sam, thank you, everybody who's working on this. It's a great vision. I look forward to seeing it come to fruition. I vote aye. Ordinance is adopted. Next item, 868.
Authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to reimburse the property owner at 5609 North Vancouver Avenue for sewer user fees paid to the city in the amount of $4,322.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, this is an emergency item, and Sherry Patterson, who's the supervisor of the revenue program, will present. If you could come forward. You have, you should have a memo, or I think everybody on council who's asked for one has gotten a briefing. It is, colleagues, it's the city's policy to reimburse property owners for sewer fees when the city discovers that a property has not in fact been connected to the city's sewer system. In other words, someone is paying charges for which they're receiving no services. Now, previously, environmental services reimbursed the property owner in this case for the last 3 years of fees. Administratively, the Bureau can only reimburse a constituent for up to 3 years. In order to go beyond 3 years, we have to come and seek council approval, which is what we're doing today. Today's ordinance, if approved, will authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to reimburse Mrs. Rutherford for prior years going back to 1993. The total amount of reimbursed fees is just shy of $6,000. Here to give us a brief overview is Sherry Peterson, Revenue Program Supervisor for the Bureau of Environmental Services. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Commissioner Fish and Mayor Wheeler and Council. Thank you for inviting me to provide a brief overview of our sewer billing and refund policy. To begin, I want to acknowledge that the ordinance before you is in response to BES making a billing error. We recognize the trouble that this has caused Ms. Rutherford, and we are sorry. Our prompt issuance of a sewer user refund is our effort to correct this billing error. BES receives requests to waive, reduce, or refund sewer connection and user charges. The Bureau does not have code authority to waive connection charges or user charges and has limited authority to refund user charges. We will refund sewer user charges that pay for the city to collect, treat, and dispose of sewage when we discover or are informed by the property owner that the property is not physically connected to the public sewer. Staff has code authority to refund the most recent 3 years of user charges. We must seek council approval to refund user charges beyond the most recent 3 years. We do not extend user charge refunds beyond 1993 because prior to 1993, the city charged every property in Portland, regardless of whether or not they were physically connected to the public sewer, a flat sewer user charge. In Ms. Rutherford's case, we previously refunded $1,519 in sewer user charges. That's the most recent 3 years of sewer user charges. And we now ask council to approve an additional refund of $4,322 in sewer user charges to Ms. Rutherford. The $43.22 is the amount Ms. Rutherford paid for sewer user charges going beyond the most recent 3 years, extending back to 1993. The total refund then is $5,841. Our Bureau requires property owners near public sewer systems to connect to it in order to protect public health and our environment. We collect user charges upon connection, and when we identify a billing error, we correct it by way of a sewer user charge refund.
And colleagues, let me just, because I know Charlotte Rutherford has graciously agreed to come today and she's going to be testifying. Let me first say that obviously when any city bureau determines that we are billing a property owner for a service they are not receiving, that's a mistake. And so on behalf of the Bureau of Environmental Services, we apologize for that error. And we apologize that you received a bill and did not receive the services. And I hope that Mrs. Rutherford, that you understand that in bringing the action today, which is limited to the question of the additional reimbursement rate, that's the only matter before the council today, we are seeking the additional funds in recognition of the fact that you are a unique case and that you paid the bill for more than 3 years. So we are asking for it. We do not have the authority under code to waive the SDCs for subsequently connecting your property without council action. So we have a bit of a catch-22. Thanks to the property owner's vigilance, we caught a mistake and we have reimbursed the property owner for the fees that she has incurred over the years. But in order to comply with our law, we now must connect her to the sanitary sewer system, and that requires that she be charged a systems development charge, as with every other property owner, for that service. There is no matter before us today to waive that SDC. It is the city attorney's advice strongly that we not set the precedent of individual waivers of SDCs, because we could have a flood of people that have either similar stories or equities or concerns or disputes who could seek on a case-by-case basis a waiver. And we think that, and the city attorney's office believes that's ill-advised. But the most important thing is we apologize for the mistake that we caught belatedly. We are strongly in support of today's action, which makes right in terms of returning all the fees, or I think most of the fees that have been incurred. And it is our responsibility to make sure we bill people for actual services. We dropped the ball on this, and we apologize. Thank you for your presentation.
Commissioner Fish, thank you for that statement, and I appreciate both the acknowledgement by the Bureau and the contrition for the error, the billing error. I have a separate question. This sounds like a billing error, and I'm wondering why it's coming to the City Council, and it sounds like the answer is because you only have code authority for 3 years
Correct.
of reimbursements. I would be very open to a change in code that would allow you to handle this through administrative process so that you don't have to delay the reimbursement. You could do it, you could work with our customers, you could resolve these issues without having to wait to come to the city council to resolve it. And if there's nervousness about what the potential liability to the city might be, I'm always happy to see a cap on it. You could say that we can reimburse for however many years we want up to a certain cap, and beyond that cap, it has to come to the city council. But I see no reason why this can't be resolved administratively by the Bureau. Commissioner Hardesty?
Thank you, Mayor. I absolutely agree with you, and I actually was sitting here trying to calculate what the interest would be on 26 years if this money had been in the bank rather than being paid for services that weren't rendered. So
I mean, that's a great, you mind if I just interrupt? Did we apply an interest rate as we went back?
No, we did not.
We did not, okay. And that's because the code doesn't provide, I think the code should provide for a reasonable amount of interest. And if the charter doesn't prohibit us from doing so, because there's some things the charter says with utilities that only council action is allowed in order to change things, I think an administrative procedure with the option of providing interest under the right circumstances is worth exploring.
Well, I mean, I just think 26 years is a long time to be paying something that you're not getting, right? And so I don't know that I'm recommending that we just do this across the board, but I do think in extraordinary circumstances, we should be extraordinary in trying to make the customer whole. And I absolutely would love to talk to you about the next steps after we've completed this council action, because, yeah, this.
Happy to, and the constraints that we operate under and maybe some options that we can discuss.
Wonderful.
Commissioner Fritz.
I also was interested in that question, and obviously I'd like to hear from Ms. Rutherford. And in order to get the money out the door as quickly as possible, we should approve this today, but it might be that there's a second ordinance to then pay the interest if that is allowed by charter. Because if it was a billing error or if it was an overdue payment that the customer owed us, we would certainly be charging interest, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and all I will say is, because I had both utilities for a number of years and have survived lawsuits and ballot measures, I'm always going to err on the side of first saying, I'd like to have a lawyer scrub this so we make sure that we're operating within our discretion. And not that I don't think that there's merit to the discussion, but I've just learned to be a little more conservative in how I approach these questions.
That's what I just said. So I'm suggesting that we go back, that I know you will go back and do that due diligence, but the expeditious thing to do is to get this money out of the door and then to see if there's a second.
That's correct.
Very good. Does that complete your presentation?
And today is an emergency ordinance.
Does for me.
Very good. And I know Mrs. Rutherford would like to come up, and are there other people signed up, Carla?
Just Charlotte signed up.
Very good.
Please come up.
Thank you.
You may actually be our last testifier this afternoon.
Well, we have one item on consent.
So we'll suspend the rules. Please take as long as you want. We have no other obligations till 6 o'clock.
I don't have a lot to say, thank you. I've provided a copy of my statement.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Charlotte Rutherford. Thank you for allowing me time on your agenda. I'm here to request that you waive system development charges with regard to my recent sewer connection. All things considered, I think waiver of the fee would be a fair and equitable solution to my situation. Let me explain. I moved into my house on Vancouver Avenue in Albina in the fall of 1972. After graduating from Portland State University and working as a civil rights investigator and compliance officer for BOLI, I moved to Washington, D.C. to go to law school at Howard University School of Law in 1980. I stayed east for a decade while getting an advanced law degree from Georgetown University Law Center, passing the D.C. bar, and working for the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund in New York City. I maintained ownership of the house and leased it to the Housing Authority of Portland while I was gone. I returned to Portland at the end of 1992 to assist my aging parents. My house was built in 1919. In October 2017, I had sewage in my basement. The repairman told me that city records showed I had a cesspool in my driveway, but that the house had been put on the city sewer system in 1921. I thought my problem was resolved until January 2018 when I had sewage in my basement again. At that time, I found out that I was host to a party line with my neighbor for both the cesspool and the sewer line. The city would not allow me to repair my sewer line until my neighbor party got off the party line. After much discussion, the city allowed me to fix the pipe break from my house to the cesspool on a temporary basis because it is illegal to have a cesspool. This temporary repair cost me $3,500. I could never understand how the cesspool and the sewer line were connected, and explanations by the city employees did not help. Throughout this time, I was being charged sewer rates. I contacted the city ombudsman during the process, and as a result, I received an administrative ruling that granted me 1/4 sewer refund and contended that my problem was fixed. I appealed, contending that nothing was fixed and that I was still paying sewer fees that I wanted refunded. My appeal was denied because I was considered a user and a ratepayer who was connected to the city system. The sewer system. My neighbor used his 2 180-day periods before he made the repairs and got off my sewer line at the end of December 2018, a full year after this headache started. Once my driveway was it took me until July 2019 to get the work done on my sewer line. Once my driveway was opened, it was clear that I had never been connected to the sewer line. I paid almost $9,000 to decommission my cesspool and complete the work that was evidently started in 1921. I requested of Commissioner Fish a refund of sewer fees paid since 1972 and reimbursement of the $3,500 temporary repair to the cesspool that had nothing to do with the sewer line repair that I needed to make. I received a partial refund of $1,519 for the sewer rates I have paid in the last 3 years. I understand that you are to vote on the balance of my refund of $4,300, which is what I have paid since 1992. I really appreciate that. However, I have had the house since 1972, and I note that my refund does not include any interest on the money that is being refunded. I am being charged $6,446 for the sewer connection. I contend whatever fees were required were paid at the time of initial hookup, and that I should not be required to pay again. I am a second-generation native Portlander, retired from public employment as a state of Oregon administrative law judge, and I live on a fixed income. I would appreciate any assistance that you can give me to make an equitable situation for us both. If there are any questions, I'd be pleased to respond.
Commissioner Fish.
So I have a proposal to make to my colleagues. First, I have a disclosure. Charlotte Rutherford and my family has a long history, and my dear wife, Patricia Schechter, archived her family papers. That does not create an actual conflict, but I just want to establish that we have a pre-existing relationship. Number two, your excellent testimony, very lawyerly in the way you make the case, raises a number of different issues. We are not an administrative tribunal today. We're not composed as a hearing panel. We have an action today, which is to expedite the payment of money and one reimbursement. We can hold off on the SDC for a little while. I recommend that we act on the matter before us, that you delegate to me the responsibility for reviewing with legal counsel what options we do have. Not what options are preferable, but what options we do have. We would then confer with your offices to see if there is an approach which has a sponsor. and then bring that back. And with your approval, we would take the lead in that piece, and if there's a champion on the council, they would then bring that matter to council. And I think we can do that within the next month, if that is your will. But I think to engage Charlotte Rutherford in her excellent presentation doesn't serve a purpose today, because I need to sit down with my bureau and with legal counsel to find out what our legal options are, and then I will confer with each of my colleagues, if that's acceptable.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Charlotte. Greatly appreciate your testimony. I want to add my apologies to you. That sounds like an absolute nightmare that you have been experiencing
I appreciate that.
since 1972. I am happy to work with Commissioner Fish and assist in any way I can to come to a responsible result from this situation. I applaud your very calm manner in presenting to us.
Very lawyerly.
All that education helped.
All that education, all that good schooling, all that work with your parents in the NAACP. And I also want to put on the public record that our relationship goes back a lot of years. However, that has no impact on my looking at someone paying a bill since 1972 and not getting the benefit of what they're paying for. So thank you for being here, and thank you for making such a clear case for us needing to do something.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz.
Judge Rutherford, thank you for being here today. And I learned something today that about before 1993, everybody paid a fixed fee, whether they were on the system or not, which sounds like we've made some progress over the last 25 years. So I will add my voice to my colleagues that it does seem to me that if the charter allows us to pay you interest, that will probably, hopefully, cover at least some of the system development charge monies. But I'm confident Commissioner Fish will look at all of the options, and hopefully we can come to some agreement on the way forward.
Mayor, if that meets with your approval, I would just call the question.
It absolutely does,
Or most importantly, does it meet with your approval, Mrs. Rutherford?
Oh, I appreciate you taking more time on the issue. The only question I have is, you all asked for the payment by the end of this month.
No, there'll be
And
no
so-
payment. There'll be no payment solicited from you.
Alrighty, and no
until
late
council-
charges if you decide not,
Until
yes,
council
okay,
has
fine.
resolved whether they're going to bring forward a matter to further address your situation.
All right.
and
That's
we
fine.
appreciate your coming in and clarifying this for us. This has been a good experience.
Thank you for
and a
giving
good
me the
learning
time.
opportunity. Did anybody else sign up for public testimony?
No one else has
Very
signed up.
good. Please call the roll.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Fritz?
Really interesting, thank you. And interesting for us, difficult for you, and thank you for, hopefully we'll get to some resolution at the end of it. Aye.
Fish?
Charlotte, I'll try to find a way to explain this in plain English to my 15-year-old son over dinner tonight. Thank
Give
you.
him my statement.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you all.
Wheeler?
Oh, you're not, are you finished?
I don't think the mayor is voting.
Right.
Aye. Now we're finished. The ordinance is adopted. We had one item pulled from the consent agenda, 866.
Approve application under the multiple unit limited tax exemption program under the inclusionary housing program for Garfield Housing LLC located at 6700 Northeast Garfield Avenue.
Very good. And
Colleagues, I have to
Commissioner,
leave in 5 minutes. so
Okay,
I'm just-
Commissioner Hardesty, was there a particular issue you wanted the Housing Bureau to cover on this?
Yes, I had the opportunity to spend some time talking to Shannon, and for me, it's the 15 million over 15 years. And so I wanted to get some sense of if we were actually making progress in that area and kind of where are we as far as these tax breaks. We're going to have a deeper conversation, but hopefully Director Shannon will just answer some basic questions for me for the record. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Shannon Callahan, joined by Dory Van Boekel, our Development Incentives Team Program Manager.
So Director Callahan, since we're going to lose Commissioner Fish, maybe we could get right to the questions because I need 4 people to vote on this.
Got it. So Commissioner Hardesty, if I understand, I have a piece of paper, just we didn't have a chance to do a presentation because we weren't expecting to do one today. But I think you were particularly asking about the limited tax exemption rolling cap average. So we had set a rolling cap, and we have still 10,817, I'm sorry, 10 million, Dory, would you just do that for me? I'm trying to read small print that I didn't write.
You're making my brain hurt.
I'm so, yeah.
Hi.
Mayor and Commissioners, with each application, we have this rolling cap that triggers, goes along, and we are currently with this, considering this application at $10,817,615.
Remaining.
Remaining
Oh,
available.
remaining. Ah, okay. So we're not even close to actually exceeding that goal yet.
No.
Excellent. I think the other questions, I'm sorry, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Did that cover your question?
I have like 20 more, but I am
Go ahead and ask,
respectful
because
of the
Commissioner
fact
Fish isn't here at
that,
the moment.
So what I noticed on the application that's in front of us today is the units is one studio and one bedroom. Do we have any data on what the mix of housing has been as it relates to the tax exemption status? And is that what you just gave me here?
Yes, so on the next page over is a running tally that we produced for the Planning and Sustainability Commission. So this data is about a month and a half, I think we're a month and a half. A couple months old. But we, so far in the pipeline, have 508 units of inclusionary housing. And as you can see, 287 of those are programmed at 60% of area median income, 207 are at 80%, and then you can see the mix of studios 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom. And what the program requires is not that they reconfigure their building, but that they provide us with the inclusionary program units comparable to the unit mix. But there is an option for developers to reconfigure their units and provide us with the same equivalent in bedrooms. This developer chose to provide us one studio and one bedroom, which is basically the same type of units that they're currently offering in their development in general.
And so out of the, I noticed, thank you for that. And so there are going to be 28 units in this property, and 0.8% will be low-income housing units, or 60% of AMI, or 80% of AMI.
Yes.
Right?
These will be at 60%.
60%.
These will be at 60% in area median income, because I don't want to be one of those people using acronyms in this building. It grows on you. Thank you very much. I think that that answers my basic questions for today. I appreciate you making time to come and give me a more detailed briefing.
Thank you, Commissioner. I look forward to spending more time with you about the program next month.
Great. Any other questions? Any public testimony?
Have a sign-up sheet.
Okay, very good. Call the roll.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Fritz,
Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. We're adjourned.